And so I had an opportunity to give a presentation to a group of some low incidence special education people within our area just last week. And I presented to them this process of ways that they can use an effective way that they can take information that they have and use NotebookLM to help them do a lot of that data analysis for them about particular students. So before I begin and show you kind of my process here that I have, I want to make sure that you understand that you do not want to be adding any personally identifiable information about a student that you're working with into one of these AI chatbots or into these LLMs, the large language models, of which NotebookLM is one, right? But there are steps that you can do to make sure that that data is anonymized or removed before you add it into that particular program. And I should say there is really good privacy constraints within NotebookLM, and they don't use any data that's imported into that to train their models. It all comes from other areas. So with that said, let me just show you kind of the process here as I walk through it, and then maybe you can adapt it to fit your own individual and particular needs. So I'm just going to start here with a Google Doc because we're able to upload Google Docs directly into NotebookLM. And so I have on here a student's IEP, and this one is just called Student A. And if you had, for example, this IEP and it had a student's name in there, and even if you started with it as a PDF, you can bring that PDF into your Google Drive. And then from there, you can open it up as a Google Doc, right? And if it's in there as a Google Doc, one of the things that you're able to do is to use find and replace to be able to change all of the instances of that student's actual name and replace it with something else. All right, so here is the document that we have for student A. And if it did actually have that student's name in there, there's a helpful way once you get your IEP into Google Docs. And so if you started with it as a PDF, you can save it to your Google Drive, right? And maybe it already is saved to your Google Drive, and then choose to open it from there in a Google Doc. And once I'm in that Google Doc, I'm going to use the find and replace feature to change all instances of that student's name to something more anonymous, like maybe student A or student B. So if I'm in here, I'm going to hit Command F, which is going to open up my find and replace tool. So if I want to change every time that it says student B in this particular document, and I want to change it to something more anonymous, I can choose that three little line drop down, and I can choose to replace that with perhaps student A. And I want to do it not just this one time, but all times. So if I click replace all and then close the window, you're going to see that all of the times where it said student B, it now says student A. So a quick and easy way to be able to redact some of that personally identifiable information. Okay, then once I'm here, I've got their IEP. I just need this as a source, right? That the data is going to analyze against, and it's going to be included in NotebookLM. And I'm going to show you where to add that here in a moment. All right, so let's go back then to the other items that you see on my little flow chart on this particular page. The next one that I have on there is a Google form. So, right, I created weekly progress monitoring about student A in a Google form, like they would send out to their regular ed teachers to try to gather performance data and progress data about how that student did that particular week in their classes based upon the goals of their IEP. Now, this might be something you already have, right? So if you already have this and you've already collected your data that you want to analyze against the IEP with, you're probably skipping this step here. But I just wanted to include it just so that you're aware. If you didn't have that particular data, you could go through and you could collect it using a Google form. And then, of course, that data is going to be sent into a Google Sheet. So the next thing here that we would have then is, what does that data look like in your Google Sheet? So I'm going to then open up this particular item, and I have it already open here in this tab as well. And you're going to see that all of the data that was entered into here under the different columns, and you're going to see that it's all broken down by teacher A, B, C, D, E, F. I even anonymized that part of it as well. And it collected it for 4 weeks. I just said it was the month of October, right? So you're going to see all sorts of different types of scores that are in there. Now, the next thing that you're going to need to do is to export this data out as a PDF. And that's simply because NotebookLM, as the way it is right now, won't accept a Google Sheet as a source, but it will take a PDF. So if I go to File and choose Download, I can choose PDF as one of those items, and you'll see it's going to bring in the data exactly as it looks. Now, one other thing here that I would note is if it did say the student's real name up here before downloading it, I would simply just make sure that I change their name out there as well, okay? And so I'll export that out. It's going to put it in my downloads folder. Then, according to the document here that we have, the next part that I want to do is to bring it into NotebookLM. So I'll go to my NotebookLM page and start with a brand new notebook if you would like. I've already created this notebook here, so instead of creating it new, I'm going to skip to here and just show you what I added. The next thing that you'll see on here then in the source area, I've added the student's IEP, and you could see that's been recreated down here. It is anonymized. I've added the questions that I used in the progress monitoring. I didn't add the Google form. I just copied and pasted the questions. So again, that when I'm analyzing the data here, the LM knows to pull that it's referencing these questions with those particular options of choices, right? And then the last thing that's on here that I uploaded, and you'll see it's as a PDF, are all of the scores. Now, I know it looks really funny because it's using its own type of coding to show exactly what it is, but all of the data for the week is there. It just doesn't look as pretty as the source that you had uploaded, but it's the same, trust me. So now the neat thing that you can do once all of this is in here is that you can start interacting with that chat bot to help ask it questions based upon the content that's over there in those sources. So like it even gives you some suggestions. And this one actually happens to look really, really good. And it says, how effective are student A's IEP goals in addressing their specific learning needs? So let's ask it this question and let's see what it comes up with. All right, so it gave me lots of great information here based upon the scores that were entered for that student, and it did a lot of that number crunching for me and related it back to me in ways that I can take that data now and maybe look at realigning the goals based upon some of their deficits and challenges. It's giving me some some of the measurable outcomes were, including that they were able to summarize the main idea with 80% accuracy in their reading, which is like, hey, you're making great progress there. Maybe not as good in math. So maybe then, when I have that student pulled out and I'm working with them, I might focus on some of those goals with them. And you can go through and you can see that there's a lot of other different types of data and stuff that gets added into there. You can also add your own questions into there, like make recommendations for new goals and performance levels for November, right? And have it give you some suggestions of tweaks and things that you can make as you move forward. So here you go. It's giving some different goal adjustments or performance level adjustments to help ensure that that student is still making adequate progress towards the goals within their IEP. So this, is a strategy, and I think you could find ways to personalize it and make it work pretty effective for you. I should also point out here too, before leaving this page, because this is just a Notebook LM thing, that if you have something here and you want to be able to keep it, um, you need to save it as a note. If you don't save it as a note and then you leave this screen and go away, or close the application and come back again, your interactions in the chat get lost. So if I want to keep those, I click that save to note and it moves it over here into my notes, right? And if I choose this one too as save to note, I'll just show you one other thing you can do here, because this might become then a source that you're going to want to use for the next month, the month of November. So if I have my note here, you can convert the notes to sources. So then it brings it in and it puts it over in the source column. And now I can ask questions against that particular source too. So I think a pretty, with a few steps, I get it. But you can really use the powers of NotebookLM, I think, to really help you with some of that data analysis that we know is a big time consumer when it comes to teachers in general, but I think special education teachers in particular.